Elina Grigoriou. I'm a design and sustainability director at Grigoriou Interiors, a company I own with my sister and business partner. We specialize in designing and advising other designers on how to create spaces that we live in, learn in, work in, have fun in, that support the activities, those activities, and also doing it in a way that's going to support the planet that we're hosted in. So I'm going to go into a little bit of that in this masterclass. And within this process, within this time, I'm going to clarify a couple of issues, and I'm going to define about 3 principles of design. So let's get started. The first principle I'd like to clarify is the term of sustainability and where well-being is in that process of creating a sustainable result. I'm going to share a couple of slides with you now that hopefully will help you understand those principles. So here goes. So we have a sustainable outcome when we consider the 3 pillars of sustainability, and well-being is one of those pillars and part of that process. So we have an economy and a business perhaps, or a home that's flourishing when the actual society that is actually living in it or working as part of it, that is flourishing. And when an environment in which we're hosted in is being supportive. So if we care for the environment, it'll care for us. And as well as we are, and as well as the people are that are inside a business or a home, that's how flourishing an economy is going to be and value we're going to extract from it. So when I talk about the well-being element now in an interior of any space, any building, and any organization, what we're looking at is that being part of a sustainable proposal. So I'm going to touch upon also the issue of benchmarking. So I'm not going to go into much depth, but I thought I'll just show you here the different schemes that you can use to benchmark different aspects of sustainability. So this is important, but most important is to set it in as an objective. So measuring things and benchmarking things, yes, it serves a purpose, and I'm a fan of them. But when it comes to well-being, putting it as a KPI of your project, of your actual home, workplace, leisure facility, at the first place is more important than achieving a benchmark. So let's look at that a little bit further. How do we do that? So as part of an original strategy, whether that's for your whole real estate or one building or one floor or one home, what you want to do is actually at the beginning set KPIs relating to well-being and what we'll call performance at the outset, and clarify those for the whole team engaged and understand who your occupants are going to be and what they're going to want. Part of that is then understanding, well, what are the actual physical activities that we're going to be doing? So what are the user profile activities that are going to take place on a day-to-day basis to deliver those KPIs? Those could be about sleeping well, eating well, having fun, being able to party well, being able to concentrate well, learn well. So understanding what that would mean as an individual activity and how it will actually deliver at the end of the day, something that's organizationally or as a family targeted. So part of the strategy is defining those KPIs relating to well-being. Now, to do those, yes, there's a process. And yes, there is a bigger process of activities you have to do as part of the design process. This is not adding on, but in fact, creating a parallel format to the current design process that we've done over the last few decades. So this is an overall format and process I'm showing here, methodology that our company has created, understanding and defining at the beginning what we need to target. What does well-being actually look like? Then understanding where we are right now in relation to what well-being would be. Then developing the targets and the designs themselves. And at the end, of course, being able to understand how we've delivered that value. So the value, of course, is including value of well-being. Now, how do we do that in practice? We'll go into detail, but first of all, what does well-being mean? And let's touch upon some of the issues. So this is some of the principles that we're going to be looking at. So first of all, if we're targeting performance, then we need to understand that that's going to be dependent on the health, the comfort, and the resilience of everyone that's going to be living, breathing, working, visiting those buildings that you are owning or renting. Health is 0. So if you don't have health, you have ill health, and you're on minus, because our natural state as human beings is to have health and to be at balance. Comfort, of course, is then what we'll experience, and that's depending on the external environment for ourselves. So the buildings that we occupy in will, to a different degree and different issues, affect our sense of comfort. And that will be then using our resilience to make up anything that is not supporting our comfort. When we have comfort, then we can start performing. And when we have resilience, we can keep that performance up. Now, well-being is an element, is a state of being that we choose to live in. So it is not something that I, as a designer, can give you or anyone that I'm designing for from like an off-the-shelf thing. It's something that I can't design for. What I can design for is to support your comfort and the comfort of everybody who's going to be in the spaces we're designing for, and allow them to choose to be well, because it's a state of being. So well-being is not a given, it's something somebody chooses to be. And this is where Shakespeare comes, to be or to be. So when we're looking at the built environment and every interior that we're designing for comfort and to support having resilience, but mostly to support the ability for every occupant of a space to choose to be well. So if you get up in the morning or somebody gets up in the morning and they just say, you know what, I'm not going to have a good day today, I'm not going to have fun, then they're not going to have fun, they're not going to be well. It doesn't matter how well I've designed an interior, they won't have or experience a sense of well-being. So this is really important to understand where our responsibility lies as designers and creators of spaces, owners of buildings, and to understand then where that relationship between ourselves and occupants lies, and communicating that to the occupants. And the other thing is that it's part of the culture. So understanding how a culture of an organization, of a home, of a school relates to achieving well-being as an ultimate aim is really important, and how perhaps the more traditional way of bricks and mortar conversations and transactions is just not going to cut it anymore. We have to engage with people now, and that should be a positive activity. And in fact, it's one that actually makes us all feel that we're engaging with something that has purpose and gives us a sense of, well-being for ourselves. So it's kind of like you get two birds with one stone. So let's move on. So we understand well-being is something that we actually have to choose ourselves, and comfort is something that actually we are designing for. So in an interior then, we say, okay, we have many different people. So we understand, first of all, the different personalities and states that the people will be in. When we're looking at people, we have to understand again the fact that all of us, that's yourself, myself, everyone is made up of 3 different elements. We're made up by our mind, the thoughts that we have, the cognitive processes. We have emotions. Classically, of course, we call it heart, but the experience of emotions. So we have an emotional body. And then we have the physical body. So we need to have comfort in all those 3 aspects that make us up. If any of those is not in comfort, then we'll be using whatever resilience we have to prop us up, and then, of course, be able to perform. So when we are saying, well, we want people to actually experience a sense of well-being, what does that actually look like? Because it's extremely difficult for people to articulate that unless, you've spent some time considering what well-being means for even ourselves. I would highly recommend that you all do that watching this, and you ask people that you're designing for to also do that. It's an extremely powerful conversation to have, because it really starts managing expectation and people start understanding what it is that we're all aiming for. So let's suggest that well-being is experienced in the following ways, in the 3 aspects of a human being. The mind. we're able to actually process thoughts with a reasonable way and do analytical thinking. That could be from making decisions while you're at home. It could be making decisions when you're buying something. It could be coming to a reasonable compromise with a client. Whatever that is, you're doing the process of reasoning. Emotions. It could be about experiencing emotions and being open to receiving and communicating emotions clearly, being able to understand yourselves, what you're feeling, and being able to actually make sense of those. The other thing is, it's about being open to the world around us. The more open we are to the world around us, the better relationships we have, the better our communication is, the more effective we can be. And also the giving of care and love, and the receiving of care and love, that makes us feel a sense of belonging. So that's really, really important. Both of those are really important, and they're the ones perhaps that have been most neglected in designing for well-being. The body, the physical body, is of course something that most readily experienced by most of us. So is my body, in my back aching? Am I cold? Am I getting noises that are interrupting me all the time? So you're constantly being taken away from a sense of comfort. And well-being feels when the body is actually light, balanced, comfortable, and really a lack of experience, but it's energized. So to support those different performances and a state where we all experience our mind, our body, and our emotion in those ways is what we're aiming for all the people that are going to be occupying those spaces and those buildings that we're designing for or owning. So understanding perhaps where somebody is in mental capacity, in an emotional capacity, in a physical capacity, is really important to understand where we need to pitch the design itself. Because yes, not everybody's the same, but we can understand in a broader way where people are. So sometimes we can wake up in the morning and feel like this. And I'm choosing this visual here because, again, it's a visual. Looking at the places and the relationship with the space around us, really us. Understanding that effect, of course, is really important for our personal choice to be well, but also understanding that that is going on and we can actually make some efforts towards adapting our built environment to affect us in a more positive way. So we want to go from perhaps going to a place like this or feeling like this to a place where we're feeling much more flourishing. And that again is in 3 ways: physically, mentally, and emotionally. We want to wake up every morning where we do feel like this, where we have the ability to choose to exist in this way, whether we're going to work, a holiday, or to school. Now, there's not one design that is the right design. So we have a general, let's say, performance basis where you can actually say, okay, well, that top there will be extreme and that bottom there will be extreme also. But within sort of a bigger bracket, we have to understand, well, what is more or less applicable to the comfort of occupants. There are many times that we can actually have some assumptions about what good design will be. A lot of the biases can exist, of course, in all sorts of relationships, but also can exist in spaces and space design. So understanding who our users are, and although we may start with an assumption of what they may need, and that can help, of course, from a time perspective and a cost perspective for fees, we really need to understand from their own mouth, from observation of users, what their preference is and what their state of emotions, cognitive performance, and their bodies are at. So we really need to understand, yes, the technical properties of a space, but we also need to understand who the people are. And when we bring those two together is when we have the right design. So it's about harmonizing the space's performance and details to the physical needs, let's say effects that a person will need. And only then when we get that harmony do we have good design. So when we're awarding good design in any kind of award ceremonies or magazine articles, really we should reframe the version of good design. And it should be articulated in the way it's meeting the need of occupants to choose to be well. So moving on, And actually this process is done through the creation of user profiles. And that is part of the principles of design. So first of all was actually understanding what we're designing for. And second is, well, how are we delivering that? So in the design process of any interior or of any really deliverable, creating a user profile is very important to both articulate and to communicate to the rest of the design team and the occupants themselves what it is you understand about them, and to meet the design needs themselves. Okay, so then in practice, what we know, we do have evidence, more and more of it, actually, more and more research being done on the understanding of the human nature and how actually the physical environment can affect us. It's been used for decades, of course, to encourage us to buy more stuff in shops, online and everything. So the point is to use the effect of design in a way that is actually going to support our well-being. So it's actually understanding what evidence do we have and intentionally using it to create that effect of comfort and to choose well-being. So here I'm showing two examples where we've got light features. One of it is made out of curved objects that have got a sort of asymmetric and random effect. And on the other, you've got something that's very sharp, very cool, and very regular in its direction. So I'm going to leave the question with you. Which one of these two light features would you choose to relax under? And which of these two light features will you place in a location where you would like people to unconsciously just move through more fast, more quickly? So understanding how we're using the power of design to create a particular state of existence or being, how it's affecting people is really important. And you yourselves will respond in a particular way with these two examples here. So when as a designer, or myself or any other designer, is actually starting to choose any kind of fittings or furniture or finishes, when we're creating a volume of a space inside a building, what we are trying to understand is, of course, how it's going to affect us. Because every pattern, color, relationship between it will have a particular impulse to the state of the human being. So that is in practice, taking it all the way from the KPIs to practice. So we've said we need user profile. We need to make sure we've got it from the beginning. We're targeting good as a result. One thing we haven't mentioned here, but is stimulation, but I'm going to keep that for another time, ask me. But beauty is the other element. So comfort and beauty are the two main categories that we are having to define a particular approach for. And beauty in very, very high level philosophical terms is basically, of course, in the eye of the beholder, and is also something that represents an aspect of truth for us. So it's very existential. Ask me over a drink or something like that. But basically what we are saying is that, yes, it will differ from one person to the next, depending on what experience of life they have. Now, we actually do understand that there are two main ends to a spectrum of beauty. One of it is abstract and one of it is realistic. And all of us will fall somewhere in between those two positions. These two images that you see in front of you are kind of falling into two ends of that spectrum. And all of you will be drawn to one or the other. And that will relate in your state of life right now and how perhaps fully met your needs are in your overall life. So when we are doing a definition of beauty and a design approach for any kind of design scheme, we have to actually understand, well, what type of beauty are all the occupants and the typical clients maybe that are using these, the typical students that are occupying the school are going to find beautiful. And again, it's going to be a broader bracket, but you will know which way of the spectrum to go for the user rather than my preference as a designer. So, to summarize where we are, to design for well-being, we need to design for comfort. We cannot give well-being to occupants or clients or visitors. They can choose to be well, but that's something that you need to communicate. Right at the beginning of a project, the whole aim needs to be communicated with the team and everyone to understand how the KPIs are going to be relevant to the kind of activities that the people are going to be able to do in those interiors. And most importantly, to understand that the spaces themselves are not what matters, but actually how people are going to live, breathe, learn, sleep in. The buildings and the real estate is a tool for us to actually perform how we want in everyday life. It's not the end in itself. And so making that as part of the aim of the project is vital to making sure that we design for well-being. And as we've seen, performance is dependent on well-being. So if you're looking for your business or your school or your sports center to perform at very high standards, then well-being at very high standards will also deliver that performance in other numerical terms. So hopefully that's clarified a few main principles, demystified a few issues, and helps yourselves and everyone really who you engage with in your projects, in your buildings, to find their own sense of well-being. Thank you very much. My name is Elina Grigoriou, and this was about designing for well-being in interiors. Bye-bye.